Well, hey there, boys and girls, ladies and gents, theys and theirs. This is Tara Shapansky from the Polish American Brotherhood and Adam Francisco from Be Free My Sheeple, and you're listening to the T&A Show, the Tara and Adam Show. Well, hey there, boys and girls, ladies and gents, theys and theirs. This is Tara Shapansky from the Polish American Brotherhood and Adam Francisco from Be Free My Sheeple, and you're listening to the T&A Show, the Tara and Adam Show. Well, hey there, boys and girls, ladies and gents, theys and theirs. This is Tara Shapansky from the Polish American Brotherhood and Adam Francisco from Be Free My Sheeple, and you're listening to the T&A Show, the Tara and Adam Show. Well, hey there, boys and girls, ladies and gents, theys and theirs.
Hey guys, welcome back to our channel, the T&A Show. This is episode 17 of season 2, and I want to thank everybody for joining us today. So today we have a very special guest for two reasons. The first is that he is a Polish American, and given that Tara is the founder and creator of the Polish American Brotherhood, we definitely wanted to have a fellow Polish American come onto our show. But secondly, our guest Chris, diagnosed with terminal cancer, and he's decided to prioritize travel. Excuse me. As many of you guys know, cancer is a very personal issue to me because my mother had cancer and my dad is a cancer survivor. So I'm very inspired by Chris. And Chris, I'd love for you to introduce yourself.
Absolutely. Thank you, Adam. So my name is Kris Sokolowski. I was born and raised in New York City. I live in Atlanta today. As Adam said, I was diagnosed with late stage 4 cancer in May of last year. So I've devoted pretty much all of my time now to educate people on early screening, encouraging them to get colonoscopies, and trying to help them through their journey as I'm going through my journey. So I appreciate the time you've given me today.
Yeah, that's definitely, I think, a good cause. I'll tell you, me, for example, I personally, I'm terrified of doctors. I haven't seen a doctor in probably about 14 years. And I know that that's definitely a concern, that I should probably go get some blood work done, because I know prevention is really important. I would love for you to tell us, walk us through the timeline of kind of how this happened, because reading the article, obviously, you're a very healthy guy. It seems you're very physically fit. You're very physically active. It seems like you're doing all the right things to live a very healthy lifestyle. But I understand from personal experience, cancer is one bitch of a disease. And it really has no regard for sometimes, the lifestyle you have. So I'd just love to hear your timeline of how you were diagnosed and how the doctors kind of broke it to you.
Yeah, absolutely. So as you said, I'm pretty physically fit. I've always been very active. And unlike you, Adam, I've been consistent with the doctor for like the last 25 years. I've never missed an appointment. I go to the doctor for everything. I got the sniffles, I'm going to go to the doctor. My elbow hurts, I'm going to go to the doctor, right? So kind of the running joke with my older sister is every time we got on the phone, I would tell her, oh, yeah, I was at the doctor. And she's like, why are you always going to the doctor? And I always said, if there's something wrong with me, I want to know now, not when it's too late. And that's the whole irony of what's happening here. And in December of 2020, I went for my yearly physical, and they did the full blood work and everything. And he goes, Chris, you're like Iron Man. He's like, you're an athlete, and we'll see you next year. And I said, okay, great. And then kind of fast forward to May of 2021. Kind of had this gurgling in my stomach. It kind of like hunger pains, right? Like you hear when you're hungry. And it wasn't going away. And it lasted for a couple of days, whether I ate or didn't eat. And I said, I'm going to go to the doctor. Maybe it's indigestion. Maybe they can give me something. So I went. I actually met with my doctor's PA. And she says, I think you got acid reflux. So she gave me some medicine and they sent me home. A couple of days later, they called me up and they said, "Hey, how you feeling?" And I said, "You know what? That gurgling is still there. There were no previous signs. There was no pain or anything like that." So she said, "Why don't you come in? We'll take an X-ray. Maybe you got some kind of blockage or something." I said, "Okay." So I came in, took a couple of X-rays, and then they sent me home. She said, I don't see anything. But then later on that night, the doctor calls me and he said, "Hey, listen, I need you to see a GI like ASAP." And I said, "Why? What's wrong?" And he says, "I'm looking at your X-ray and I see a mass on your colon and I see a mass on your liver." And I said, "What do you think it is?" He's like, "Look, the GI will be able to explain it better, but in my professional opinion, it looks like it's stage 4 cancer." And I was like, "Holy shit!" How did we miss this? And he's like, it's one of those things. So anyway, after he told me that, I went downstairs and my wife works from home as do I, and I said, "The doctor thinks I have stage 4 cancer." And we were in shock. I mean, it was just, how can this happen, right? Such a healthy guy, never missed a doctor's appointment. Anyway, we scheduled the appointment with the GI, and he took us in. The GI called me up and he said, "Your doctor faxed me over the X-rays." He goes, "I cleared my calendar tomorrow. I need to see you tomorrow." And that got me even more nervous, right?
Oh, absolutely.
So we went the next day. We saw the GI, and immediately he scheduled me that same day, like 2 hours later, an MRI, which is kind of unheard of, right? I mean, MRIs are really hard to schedule. But anyway, it came back and it showed that I had cancer on my colon, my liver, my sternum, my spine, the walls of my abdomen, and in my lymph nodes. So immediately they scheduled me for a colonoscopy. They did a biopsy. They confirmed that it was late stage 4 cancer. And that was on a Thursday. By Monday, I'm already seeing an oncologist. So that was kind of the timeline of how everything happened.
I just can't imagine, hearing that news from a doctor. I myself, I was diagnosed with hypertension about 14, 15 years ago. And that's part of the reason why I've never gone back to the doctor, because the last time I saw a doctor, they diagnosed me with hypertension. But I remember they were trying to get to the root of why my blood pressure was so high. And I had to go through a kidney biopsy. I had to go through the MRI. And what was crazy is they had said to me, one of the potential causes of what you have could be like blood cancer, bone marrow cancer. And even me hearing those words alone was so jarring and shocking that it's terrified me so much from ever going back to the doctor again. And I still obviously, live with that trauma from it, which is why I avoid the doctors at all costs. But you're actually inspiring me now. Maybe I should go get a checkup. And as you said, it's probably better to catch something if you do have it and treat it than the way that I've been approaching it, for the past 15 years of just trying to ignore it. And I don't know if that's necessarily a good thing. What kind of treatment plan has the doctor put you on?
So they actually gave me a choice, right? It was they call them cocktails, but they're drugs, right? So
Yep.
they basically said you could go on the 2 cocktail, the 3 cocktail, or the 4 cocktail. And I said, what's the difference between all of them? And they kind of ran through the explanation of the drugs. And I said, look, at the time when I was diagnosed, I was 48 years old. I have a 10-year-old boy and a wife. And I said, look, I'm young, I'm strong. Give me the hardest thing that you've got, so we can maybe knock this out. Just give it to me while I can do it. And the doctor looked at me and he goes, "This will kick your ass. Expect hair loss, dropping 30 pounds, throwing up every day, not being able to get out of bed, fatigue." All this. And I looked at him and I go, "No, man, I don't like what you're prescribing there. So those side effects you keep to yourself. I'll do the drugs. Let me handle that." And that's kind of the mindset that I went in on it. And I was doing 6 hours of chemo every other Tuesday.
Wow.
And after my 6 hours, I have a port in my chest right here. They kind of stick the needle in, and they
Yep.
just pump me full of poison, for that entire time. And then once my chemo was done, then they leave the needle in me for 2 more days, and I went home with this bag in my hand that had chemo inside that bag. That every 40 seconds would squirt a little, you know, more poison into me over a 48-hour period. And of everything, I would say that was the most mentally draining because, you know, you can't shower really. You got to go with it. You got to sleep with it, go to the bathroom with it, and you're carrying this thing around for 2 full days, and all you hear is bzz, bzz, every time it squirts medicine in you, and it was a pain in the neck. But on the flip side, when they were expecting me to come in by like the third, fourth treatment where my hair's falling out, I'm thin as a rail, right? I'm coming in and I'm like, all right, let's get this done,
Wow.
right? I'm putting on weight. I'm not tired. I'm like, just let's go. I got my laptop with me. I'm taking conference calls. I'm doing, everything that I would do in the office, but I did it at the clinic, right?
Right.
I'm like, I'm not going to let this thing defeat me. I'm not going to let this thing control my life. I'm in control,
Right.
right? And I think one of the things that really helped me early on was when I got diagnosed. It's like my entire life came to a screeching halt, and then everything was going in slow motion for me, right? And I decided that I got to start eliminating some of the stresses in my life. And by the third, fourth, fifth time I was going to chemo, I spent 50, 60 hours cumulatively, whether it was the doctor, blood work, chemo, and I'm like, where's all this time coming from? It's not like the day got any longer, right?
Hmm.
And then I realized that I've eliminated 90% of all the noise in my life, right? And I focused on getting better, and I focused on my family. And really, once I started doing that, all my stresses just started going away. And I honestly believe that helped me tremendously keeping my hair. My appetite was great when it was supposed to, pretty much be diminished.
Yep.
But I just kept a positive attitude, and that's kind of how my treatments went. And then real quick, so today I'm actually on half chemo, right? So I
Awesome.
was actually doing so well, and the tumor shrunk to a respectable level, where
Wow. So
they
it's
said,
working.
so yeah, so I have a mutation that there's no cure for, and they told me that the ugly thing about the mutation that I have, it's known to overtake the chemo, and it eventually becomes resistant. And once that happens, then they take me off chemo and they try immunotherapies.
Mm.
They basically throw everything, including the kitchen sink at me to see what's going to keep me alive the longest, right? Statistically, they gave me like 30 months with the chemo, but within that 30 months, I'm also lumped in statistically with the 60, 70, 80 year olds, right?
Right.
Mine can go 60 months, right? They don't know. It's how long I could take it, how long I could resist it. So all that remains to be seen. Right now we're playing this game of, okay, my tumor shrunk, right? So they can put me on half chemo, but once they start spreading and growing, then they put me back on full chemo to try to get them to shrink back down again so they
Yep.
could put me back on the half chemo. And we keep playing that game until the resistance, kind of kicks in.
Yeah. Chemotherapy, I watched both my parents go through it, and my mom went through it when I was 13, and then again, the cancer came back for her, and then I watched her go through it a second time. And the interesting thing is it affected my parents so differently. Like, kind of like you, my dad, when he was on the chemo, he didn't lose his hair. He didn't really lose his appetite. He seemed to be able to resist a lot of the chemo side effects. Whereas my mom, she was a victim, unfortunately, to all the side effects that you were talking about, the hair loss, the losing 30 pounds, the loss of appetite. So I know, not from personal experience, of course, but just watching my family, my mom and dad going through it, what a freaking bitch chemotherapy can be. And the fact that you did not lose your hair, you are, your appetite's been great, you look, fantastic. I think that really speaks to the amount of preparation that you put into your body just because you lived a healthy lifestyle before the chemo came. And this is why I always try to tell people that it's really important. And I think COVID also kind of really emphasized this, to keep your body fat down, to put on some muscle mass, to take your vitamins, to live an active lifestyle. And, my website is called BeFreeMySheeple.com. And originally it was served kind of as a message that you yourself are sharing, which is life is short. No one knows when your life is going to end. So why would you want to spend 90% of your time working on a career when really it's all about doing things that you enjoy and spending time, with your family? And I think that you can attest to that.
There's no doubt in what you're saying is true. When my son was born in 2010, we weren't supposed to be able to have kids. He's kind of like our miracle child. He's our only son, born on Christmas Eve, right? And interesting fact too, a little tidbit I'm going to say here. On Christmas Day in 2010, it snowed, and it was the first time it snowed in Atlanta in 88 years. So, very, very special moment for us. But my wife and I made this promise that we would take our son out of the country every year. We're avid travelers. We've traveled around the world. And up until this point, my son just turned 11 this past Christmas Eve. We happened to be in Bora Bora. And
Nice.
it was his 19th country that he's visited.
Holy
Wow. How old is he now again?
11.
19 countries
Tara,
by
he's
11
trending
years
ahead
old.
of you.
Wow, that's
19
amazing.
countries, yeah. And that's that's what we do. There's families that we know, they go to Disney, drop 10 grand, which is all well and good. That's what they like to do. We like to save up every year and find new places to go to. When my son turned 7, I think we were either in Japan or Croatia. I don't remember, but up until that point, he was just a boy that kind of went with his parents. He had no sense of I'm just going away, right? After that trip, I believe it was Japan. He said, "Dad, where we're going next year?" And I'm like, yes, it clicked, right? He's into this and he enjoys it. And now he's a part of the whole planning where, he'll help us pick a country that we're going to go to. He helps with the planning of what we're going to do while we're there, what we're going to see and what we're going to visit. Because it's really important to us that it's not just about me and my wife going to museums and doing all this touristy stuff. It's, it's one day for us and it's one day for him, and it keeps him interested. And we kind of keep rotating that throughout the entire trip. So even if we are in a museum and he's kind of bored, he knows that tomorrow is all about him. And,
Right.
and he's going to do all this exciting stuff. So he kind of grin and bears it, while we're doing it. But it's that knowing that we're going to go somewhere, that we're going to travel somewhere, that gets me excited, right?
Yeah.
Because I spend a lot of time on planning, on looking at pictures, on watching YouTube, watching others, what they did. And, that just makes me happy all along. It takes us about 3 months to pick a country, 3 months to actually figure out the logistics of what we're going to do.
Mm-hmm.
And then we leave like 2 or 3 months later. So like the whole process is almost like 9 months. So it almost takes an entire year. And that entire process, every time, we're thinking about it, it just brings us happiness and joy because we know we're going to be doing something, one, that's kind of out of the norm. We pick countries that most people don't go to. And two, we try to stick to, and this is getting shorter and shorter, countries where they speak as little English as possible.
Huh.
It's actually part of the adventure for us. People are like, oh, I would hate that. But you know what? There's something to be said about trying to communicate with your hands, people actually wanting to help you that can't speak your language.
Yep.
And then lastly, watching my son just go up to a bunch of kids that don't speak English and he doesn't speak their language, but they play for hours and they communicate in their own way, and they know exactly what they're talking about.
Yeah.
And it's just, we just sit there and we watch, and that just makes us so happy. And our goal when we set out to do this was to have a child that's very well rounded, respects diversity, knows that there's something outside of YouTube and Xbox, and we're getting there, and it's paying off. So this is why we travel. And I told my wife the last day that we were in Bora Bora, I said, you know what, if there's anything that's going to cure my cancer, it's this place. And
Wow.
we should look into maybe moving here.
Wow. So, Kris, the plan to take your son traveling, that was always the plan from the point that he was born, that to give these experiences to him. And even with you fighting for your life, you haven't put that on pause at all. That sounds fantastic.
No, not at all. My son comes to me every so often. He goes, Dad, you don't look like you have cancer. And and I get a lot of that from my wife and my neighbors. And it's like, look, right now it might be good. I don't know what tomorrow is going to look like, but I'm fighting every day. And my son knows that. Number one, I'm going to MD Anderson in Houston. It's the best hospital in the world for cancer. I have the best doctors in the world. I'm taking the best medicine. I'm taking care of myself the best that I can. We're strong believers in God. So we believe, whether it's a miracle, whether it's through the power of positive thinking, whether it's a breakthrough in medicine next year. Nobody knows. But my goal in life is to be here when you're married, to see your children, to retire. I'm not going anywhere anytime soon. And that's what we reinforce with my son every day. And, he looks at me today, not as, a guy that's dying. He looks at me today like he did a year ago, 2 years ago. Dad's still here. He looks great. He looks healthy. And, we still have our, daddy son arguments. He doesn't, pull back anything. Just, he doesn't feel sorry for me. But he does. There are those times that he'll come to me and just out of nowhere, he'll give me a hug and say, Dad, I really hope you get better.
Yeah. And I got to say, as you're talking this whole time, I love the map behind you. The map of the world, because it's kind of symbolic of the life that you and your family are choosing to live. And I will say, your lifestyle, it sounds like the type of lifestyle Tara wants for her family in the future.
Yeah, absolutely.
Am I right, Tara?
Absolutely.
Kris, I got a question for you. Since you are a world traveler, I guess it's the same question, but which has been your favorite country for a family, and which has been your favorite country that you've been to?
Okay. Up until this last trip, the 18 countries before, we've been asked that question a lot.
Yep.
And I always had the same answer, that we never really had a favorite because every country had something special to offer.
Yep.
And we've always found, highlights that just really resonated with us. And every country was so different, whether it was Indonesia, Slovenia, Ireland, China. But, to be fair and honest, Bora Bora was probably, really, really high on that list. Huh. There's something to be said, you can get on a boat, jump out into shark-infested waters, and just kind of swim around with sharks, right? The water was crystal clear turquoise. Everybody on that island is just happy. And, they use phrases like maruru, like you and I would say good morning to each other. They say maruru. And maruru translated means I give you life, right? And I find that beautiful, right? And there's just these other phrases that they use that, it just puts a smile on your face. And the energy there was infectious. Right. So everywhere you go, everybody that you talk to, all of a sudden you find yourself smiling. I mean, we were there for 15 days and like my cheeks and jaw were hurting from smiling so much. So I would say that's up there. But if you ask my son, he loved Bora Bora, but Japan was probably one of his favorites.
Hell yeah.
And he walked in, and they're so far ahead of us technology wise, right? That he was playing games that to him seemed futuristic. Yep. I mean, they're at least 5 years ahead of the U.S. in technology. So I thought that was pretty cool. For me personally, I think one of my favorites was China.
Oh, nice.
And I'm kind of like a history guy, and it's kind of like everywhere you went. And we went to Beijing, Xi'an, Chengdu, Luoyang. We went to about 6 different cities, and like everywhere you went, you were like 3,000-4,000 years, back in history. To see these terracotta warriors. You're walking through a park that was around 3,000 years ago, and it's just the history in that country just blew me away. And not to mention the people, how friendly they were, and genuinely wanted. You open up a map, and all of a sudden you're surrounded by 5-6 people that don't speak English, but they want to help you where you're going because you're a foreigner. Right. And that was probably one of my favorites. My wife, I don't know, Slovenia, Croatia, somewhere in Europe, Bali. Oh my God, she loved Bali.
Bali's one of my favorites. Women love Bali. Women love Bali. That's definitely one of my favorites. So I am on board with her with that one.
Tara, have you been to Bora Bora before?
I haven't been to Bora Bora yet. Bora Bora is very high on my list because I grew up doing Polynesian dancing. So like Tahiti and French Polynesia, Bora Bora, like I'd love to be able to go there. So hopefully one day soon I will make my way to Bora Bora. But
it's only an 8-hour flight from LA. Do it.
It's only an hour flight?
8 hours.
Oh, an 8-hour flight. I was like, wait, an hour? What am I missing out? I was like, what?
In 30 years, it'll be an hour. We'll have some supersonic jets in like 30 years. But Chris, Grayson here, the man in the suit, the handsome boy in the suit next to me, he actually lived in China for 5 years as well.
I lived there a long time.
Yeah, so he has a lot of experience in China.
Yeah, it's one of those things that when we left, we were like, should we become like English teachers and move here? And it was really nice. We enjoyed. We were there 3 weeks and really enjoyed our time there. We got to see a lot. Again, we're the type of, we're not very touristy people. You have to do the wall when you go to China, right? I mean, that's just a given. But we went to see the pandas in Chengdu, the terracotta warriors in Xi'an. One of the great things in the highlights, like I said, we do things for my son. So we went to the Shaolin Temple, which is the birthplace of Kung Fu. And he got such a kick out of this. They came out with, it just so happened while we were there, they were letting out like one of the schools, and it was like 3,000 or 4,000 kids that just all marched out, and then they started practicing Kung Fu. And it was just amazing to see.
That's so cool. I've only been to Hong Kong and Taiwan. I have not spent any time yet in China.
Yeah, you should go to mainland China. It's they have a very authoritarian, ethnocentric government, and that's a big reason why they have 5,000 years of continuous history, because they are very much an empire, and they see themselves as the center of the world. So,
oh, that's interesting. Hey,
and it's super safe. I would not commit a crime in that country. Sometimes you see those the military guys with like this 6-foot iron rod in their hand, and I just picture them, cracking you over the head if you get out of line. So we felt very safe there.
Hey, Chris, have you been to Thailand or Mexico? Just curious.
My wife's been to Thailand before we got married.
Awesome.
And Mexico, we've been at least 3 times.
Awesome. Yeah, that's a pretty easy trip to make from the U.S.
From Atlanta, it's like, 2 hours maybe. I mean, it's super easy.
Awesome. Hey, Tara, pull the meme on my screen up real quick. I just want to show this because I think this kind of is really, it's a meme that I love, and it kind of ties into our conversation. And I think, Chris, you could obviously attest to this. I'm sure. Can you see it on the screen, the meme that we're looking at?
I can.
So this is basically on the top, the way a lot of people look at life and they look at money. and it's all about chasing money, and it's chasing, really, in my opinion, the wrong things. Like, yes, you do need money to live, but if that becomes your sole purpose and value, you're going to be that dude at the bottom that has all this money. Your life's coming to an end. Now you can't take it with you. And
That's
so,
correct.
So the approach that you've had, I mean, the way I see it, when someone is diagnosed with cancer, it can be a really cruel wake-up call into the reality of life, and really highlights just the limited time we have left. So this meme is just one of my favorite memes that exists out there. I also want to pull in the article from CNN, so if people want to read it. Here it is, Tara. I pulled it up on the screen. I got it.
All right.
So this is how I heard of Kris. This was the article because I'm a big CNN reader, even though I know that it's, I don't always agree with their spin on stories, but yeah, there you go. I think we all read between the lines of where we're both at politically, but I still always do go to CNN. It's a great website in terms of like their layout and format, so I love it. And this is the article. I've got terminal cancer. Here's why I'm prioritizing travel. And where is this picture that you have right here in the article?
So this was the island of Padar in Indonesia, and we stopped. Padar, yeah. So it's the only place where you'll find, and if you take a closer look, it's white sand beaches. To me, it's on my right. Yes. Pink sand beaches that are in the back, and then black sand beaches that are in the front left. So we sat up there and we got a nice shot of all three beaches. This was right before we went to Komodo Island, where the only place on earth where you find Komodo dragons.
Oh, and, nice.
Yeah, so we went there, and that was fantastic. I mean, when you got 14-foot poisonous lizards that are following you around, it's pretty adrenaline packed. So, wow. But that was a nice trip.
Awesome. Yeah, I've always wanted to see Komodo dragons. They seem like crazy looking animals. It's almost like dinosaurs. And there you are on the Great Wall, I think, of China. Is that right?
That's correct. That was the Great Wall of China. My son there was like a rock star. It's like, you got 1 billion people there that are all, dark hair, dark eyes. And here's my son, light hair, pale skin. And people don't typically travel with, young children like this in China. Yep. So, like everybody was coming up and wanted to take selfies with him. And there were times like we had to like cover him up. We had this like a big stroller for him, and we would cover him up so we could get some peace and quiet. But yeah, he was a rock star, and I felt like I was part of his entourage.
Well, for a lot of Chinese, that's the first foreigner that they've ever seen.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Little mini superstar right there. Yeah. Did he like the attention, your kid? Did he enjoy it?
Oh my God. Somebody came up to me and asked to take a selfie with me. He actually got mad.
Yeah, he doesn't want
no, I'm over here. I'm over here. Yeah.
And then this is in Seoul in Korea, right here?
That's correct. So that was a stop off. We spent a week there before we went to Jakarta. And then we were in Jakarta for 3 days, and then we hopped over to Bali for, I think, 10 days.
Awesome. Yeah, I like Seoul a lot. You got where is this exactly? It says Slovenia. Yeah. I would have never guessed.
Lake Blood?
It was so Lake Blood was actually on the other side of where we're sitting. So we passed it, and then we found this like little stream going by with the waterfall. We thought it was very picturesque, so we sat down and took a picture.
Oh yeah, it's beautiful. This is a great article. I mean, the photos they use of you guys are awesome.
Thank you. Malta.
Awesome.
That was a nice trip, and that's Bora Bora. Yes, we did stay out in one of the huts out on the water.
Oh, that's so
always
cool.
Been a dream. Yeah, it is everything and more. Wow. It's like you look at it like whether on pictures or on YouTube, and you're thinking, wow, that looks so cool. But when you're actually there in it, it's way better than cool. And yeah, it was definitely. So we didn't travel in 2020 because of COVID. Everything was locked down.
Yep.
So when we were supposed to go to Iceland in June of 2021. but I was diagnosed with cancer and my chemo started and stuff like that. So we couldn't travel. But then when they gave me a break in my chemo because they said I was doing well, we decided to jump on the opportunity and say, look, we didn't travel last year. We got the budget from last year. We got a budget for this year. Let's blow it out. Let's do something really, really cool. And we didn't want to go to Iceland in December because we went over Christmas holiday. So we picked somewhere warm, and Bora Bora, Tahiti sounded like a really nice, place to visit.
Let me ask you, how much do they charge a night for one of these like little huts on the water? Do you remember?
I think if I remember correctly, it was around $7.99 a night.
Hey, that's baller. Good for you, man. You deserve it.
Yeah, though. It was. Yeah,
it's a bucket list thing because I've never stayed in one of those places, and one day I'd like to bring a lady out to one of those huts and just maybe that's where I'll make the baby. You never know.
Yeah, look, you want to impress a woman.
Yes.
I'm going to tell you a story in 30 seconds. My first date with my wife was in South Africa. Wow. And,
hold on. You can't just casually say that and then move forward. How do you do a first date in South Africa? Explain.
Yeah, that's a good question.
Yeah. How do you end up at that point?
So I was living in California and my job was transferring me to Atlanta. And my best friend lived in Atlanta, and I called him up and I said, hey, listen, I'm moving to Atlanta. Would you drive cross country with me? Because I had a really big dog and I wasn't going to stick him on a plane. So he's like, yeah, sure. So he flies out to California. We drive back cross country. And, you talk a lot out on the road, right? And he told me that, he dated this girl for 3 months. She was awesome, but it just didn't work out. They broke up and, I'm a guy. You don't ask why people break up. You just don't care because you're a guy, right? That's something girls talk about. So we just kind of, changed the subject, kind of went on. And then once we moved here to Atlanta, it was about a week later, we were at a local pub and in walked these 5 girls. And he knew all of them and he introduced me to all of them. And he goes, oh, by the way, that was, Elizabeth, the girl that, I told you that, we broke up. And then that's when it hit me. I'm like, okay, now I'm curious why, because she was super good looking, right? And anyway, we started running into each other. We had a very small circle of friends. So I kept seeing her, whether it was at, house parties or festivals or at the pub, wherever. And then, she had a big dog as well. And we just started bumping a lot into each other at the dog park. And then we were like, hey, why don't we go to the lake, take the dogs to the lake. And then we became really good friends. So that started in February. By April, my friend John and I were at dinner and I said, hey man, I got this thing for Elizabeth. Would you mind if I asked her out? And he goes, oh my God. He goes, you guys would be awesome for each other. And I'm like, thanks, dude. Right. So it was like 2 days later, I'm asking her out and she's like, nah, I dated John and I don't want the drama and this and that. And I'm like, all right, whatever. And then, like 2 weeks later, I'm taking her skydiving. 2 weeks after that, I'm joining the gym, the kickboxing gym that she's at, and we're doing Muay Thai fighting together.
Nice.
So we actually became best friends. And I would ask her out at least every other week, and she kept turning me down, right? And then here comes July 4th, and we go to a July 4th party, and I accidentally hook up with her best friend. Right? Oh my God. So then the next day she finds out about it. The next day she literally comes up to me and she goes, now I'll never date you. And I'm like, oh, so there was a possibility, right? So then August comes around, we're still hanging out, we go skydiving, and by September, like I had enough, and I called her up and I said, I bought us 2 tickets to South Africa, we're going diving with great whites, you're coming with me.
Wow.
And she goes, we're going as friends, right? And I'm like, yeah, of course we are. And so we ended up going to South Africa. The 15-hour flight out there, we talked the entire time. And then we got there and we spent 2 weeks in South Africa, kind of just driving around the entire Cape and the coast. And we came back, and 6 months later, we're getting married, buying a house, and having a baby.
Holy crap.
Wow. Wow.
You took charge, though. I mean, that's the thing.
If you want to get married in 6 months, go to South Africa on a first date.
You got that right. You got that right. When I set my sights on something, I kill it, right? And that's exactly how I treat this cancer. It's like, you know what? I set my sights on getting better, and that's what I intend to do. And I'm not going to stop until I get better.
That's awesome. I'm looking at the CNN article, and you have a really fantastic quote in here that I'll read. And this is funny that I'm reading your quote to you. So this is kind of meta, but you add, the one thing I've always told people is get out of your bubble, get out of your city, and go see the world. It amazes me how many people are not interested in traveling or interested, and they tell me, well, we can't do this, and they make excuses. Stop with the excuses and do it. That's right. That's right. That's a great quote.
You know what? And that stems a lot. Number one, if you're from New York, Long Islanders don't leave Long Island, right? Going to Manhattan for them is like going to a different country, right? And I always found that funny. And then two, like when I moved down to the South, SEC football is so big, right, that people plan their lives around football games. And that's mind-boggling to me. It's a game. I get it. I don't judge, but I do believe, the world will open your eyes to a lot of things, and whether it's just the cuisine, the people, the scenery, the disconnecting from everything here in America, what's going on, right? It pushes a reset button. At least for me, it does, and for my family, and that's why we do it.
Yeah, I think one of the issues that I see in the world today, especially amongst Americans, is that, from my understanding, Tara, only 30% of Americans have a passport. I think, is that the number around there?
I heard the same statistic.
Right, about 30%. And the problem is, if you only know the U.S. and you've never left the U.S., you're not going to have a good global worldview. You're going to have nothing to compare this country to. And so, to me, as many issues there are in the U.S., because let's be honest, there are some issues here in this country. The fact that I've traveled the world like you do, Kris, and I get to compare and contrast, it makes me also appreciate America more, I feel, than someone who's never left this country.
Yeah, no question. We are the greatest country in the world, hands down. And I will always believe that. And even though I would like to move overseas, I would always keep a place here just to come back.
Yep.
And the interesting thing too, it didn't matter where we were. When somebody heard like where we're from, they would always ask like political questions. Like, is it real what they are telling us on TV? Mm-hmm. And a lot of times I'm finding out that it's not. It's even their own countries are telling them, something that's, maybe skewed a little bit. That's maybe it's just not my opinion, but there's a lot of information out there they're driving the narrative so people see us in the way their government wants to see us. And I find that really interesting. And I was getting a haircut in Croatia one time a few years ago, and the barber asked me that question. And he goes, I knew it. They're lying to us. And I'm like, it's just the way it is. I live there because I think he asked me, is New York really, kind of like murders every day? And I'm like, no. I'm like, it's not like that at all. People are in a hurry. Maybe they don't want to talk to you, because they're very busy.
Yep.
But no, something happens in New York, there will be 100 people there to help you. New Yorkers are the ones, they will rush into, burning buildings to save your life. Right. And he was like, that's not how they portray New York here. And, and I just found that really interesting. And that happens a lot.
Yeah. I always say that New York, considering it's a city of 10 million people now, is one of the most, look, before 2020 and 2021, because obviously things have changed in the last couple of years. Yeah. But prior to that, I was always amazed about how safe New York City is. and then for the media to spin it and make it seem like it's a city of murder, up until 2 years ago, it really wasn't. It's a really safe place.
Sure. I mean, I love New York. I love the fact that I'm from there.
Yep, me too.
I've lived around the country, Atlanta, California, Denver, and Atlanta's my favorite spot. Now I call it home, but again, I'm proud to be a New Yorker. I'm happy that I'm from there. I wouldn't want to move back there. I kind of shed that my winter coat.
Yep.
So, but I still have a lot of family and friends there.
So I got a question for you. Since we do have Tara here from the Polish American Brotherhood, what type of connection do you have to Poland? Have you been there with the family yet? Have you personally been there? Like, what's your experience with Poland?
So I'm first generation born. My parents were born in Poland. They migrated here legally in 1970. They waited in line. It took them like 20 years to get a green card. But when they came here, they were poor. So when I wasn't in school or daycare when I was younger, they would, for the first 11, 12 years of my life, they would send me to Poland over the summer. So I spent my summers in Poland. I'm fluent in Polish. I was trying to teach my son. He wasn't having it. He's like, I want to talk English. But I grew up in a very, very traditional Polish household. Pierogies, gołąbki, which is stuffed cabbage, bigos, which is beef stew. My grandmother was the baker. So it's very, very, very traditional. I keep the roots going. There's certain traditions that I've taught my wife and my son that we hold today. Specifically, I'll give you an example. On Christmas Eve, we share a wafer. It's like the wafers you see at a Catholic church, right? And we share that with each other on Christmas Eve, and we tell each other, kind of what we're thankful for and what we're sorry for the previous year. And it's something that's very moving and touching for me because I've been doing it since I was a child. And now it's kind of like, my son or my wife is like, all right, where's the bread, and talk about the wafer. And, we're all excited to do it. And, it's become a tradition in my house. So I love that my son embraces, my wife is Irish, by the way. Okay. And he embraces both cultures. We've been to Ireland 3 times. I haven't taken him to Poland yet because when I do, I wanted him to be of an age where he can remember my family and the things around him. But, he'll wear a shirt that says, one day I'm proud to be Polish. The next day he's wearing an Irish jersey, and he's super proud of it. And I love that, right? Growing up in New York, in the 70s and 80s, those kids could have been brutal. You're a Polak, there were all these Polish jokes, and it's not like that anymore. And I'm glad that he embraces it, and he's proud to show those colors, and I just love that.
What part of Poland is your family from?
So it's my mother's from kind of a country or mountainous region called Zielona Góra, which means green mountain. And not far from Krakow. Okay,
so that's in the south then.
Yes. And then my father is from Gdansk.
I was just in Gdansk earlier this year. It's beautiful. Yeah, I love it. With the
it is
the Solidarity Museum and learning the history of the post office being one of the first areas that was attacked during World War II, when Germany came, and also what was the name of that naval area? Oh, it eludes me. I totally went to go visit that battlefield of it.
Right. I remember in the 90s when my mom wanted to call her family in that town that she grew up in. Her phone number was 9. I am not kidding you.
What, 9?
It was 9. Yeah. So they would call an operator in Warsaw. The operator in Warsaw would connect with an operator in that little town where she grew up, and the phone number was 9.
That's
And
crazy.
my mom's family was one of very, very, very few people that had a phone in the house.
Oh, wow.
That's
Yeah.
amazing. In case you're wondering, Tara is half Polish, half Filipino. Her dad is a Polish gentleman, and
There's no
last
wondering. You can tell she's Polish just by looking at her.
Oh, totally.
and her last name is Japansky.
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 Yeah, so you guys both got the skis in your last name. That's the most popular way to end a Polish name, right?
Yeah, well, in America, because in Poland they recognize gender for your last name, so I should be a Ska. But since
right.
the U.S. doesn't recognize gender, I'm Ski to have the same surname as my father. But I would be Szczepańska in Poland. And actually, Chris, so one time when I went to a gym when I was in Poland and I wrote Szczepański, and they gave me a locker in the men's locker room, but I came back out. I was like, no, I'm a girl. I'm a girl.
Oh, they thought you were transgender or something.
I don't know if transgender is going to fly very well in Poland, but
Right.
yeah, they're like, guy, girl, last name is boy, so you must go there.
Hey, Chris,
And don't confuse it with SKY, because that's typically Russian.
Oh, okay. Chris, did you tell your son that you're going to be on a YouTube channel? Did he get excited about that at all? I know kids usually they love to see they're obsessed with YouTube.
Yes. And he goes, how many hits do you think you're going to get? You know, it's like, are you going to have subscribers? You know, and I'm like, it's not like that. So I have a blog that I
What's
write.
the blog?
So the link for the blog is actually in the CNN article. So it's towards the bottom. It says blog. If you click on it, it'll take you to my blog. It's actually it's called Caring Bridge, and it's a site where it chronicles my journey with cancer, and it should be towards the bottom, I think.
Yeah, I'm trying to see if I can pull it up. CNN doesn't want to get people off their website. They want to keep people on.
No,
their
they
website.
don't. They don't.
Do you have the URL? Can I just type it in?
Yeah, so you can go to caringbridge.org.
Caringbridge.org.
Yeah, and then once you get on that site, is there a search?
Search.
Yeah, click on search, and you could just put in Kris Sokolowski, I believe. KRIS and SOKOLOWSKI. There I am.
Oh, nice.
Yeah. And listen, you could see I had 32,000 visits on this thing. CNN helped tremendously. I probably had about 15,000 prior to this. But then after the CNN article came out, a lot of people went to read my blog, and it chronicles not everything just about cancer, but what I realized and what was eye-opening to me was how much my faith has grown since being diagnosed. I'm by no means a Jesus freak, but what I have noticed that my faith did grow exponentially. And in years past, we all have our vices and our troubles and our difficulties, and we're always asking God for something, right? It's like, oh God, please help me do this or stop this or whatnot. And I always felt maybe like God wasn't listening. And then I got cancer, and I felt like cancer was God's way of kicking me in the ass and telling me, you know what? I was talking to you, but you weren't listening. And it chronicles all these things that I have noticed through my journey that God has put in front of me. And I call them little miracles or God winks, whatever you want to call it. But, my friends and community and family that read through my blog, they're like, Kris, this is incredible. I can't believe, this actually happened, and, I encourage people, read it, not for my sake, but just if it helps you grow your faith a little bit stronger, it's really good. And people have told me, dude, you got to pull this down and just write a book or, your memoirs or something like that. I do take a lot of pride in my writing, Writing a blog takes me a long time because I just want it to be phrased perfectly.
Yep.
I'm my own biggest critic, and people are like, "Dude, this is amazing," and I'm like, I should have said this, and they're like, No, it's perfect, So I do want to pat myself on the back a little bit about the blog. So.
Awesome. The way that I write my blogs is I just speak into it like Mike and I orate my blogs. So that way, when it comes written, it's almost in my voice. That's just the way I do it. But we've shared this with our audience. We'll put a link in the description. Kris, where can we find you on the internet? Is your Instagram a good place for people to find you, or what do you recommend?
Instagram is fine. I'm kind of, considered old fashioned because I'm on Facebook more than I am on Instagram. But you could just. I don't know how many Kris Sokolowskis are out there, but definitely hit me up on Facebook. I do every country I go to. I do a ton of Facebook Lives. And one of the reasons I started that was, again, I guess China, when my son was 3, so I guess this was about 7, 8 years ago, I did my first Facebook Live from China. And I got such an overwhelming response from people telling me that, this is a place I'll never be or I'll ever go to, but I would love to go there, but I don't have the means or I'm sick or whatever. And I love to travel through your eyes. And that really struck me when that person said it the first time. So now everywhere I go, I'm walking around with my phone and I'm doing Facebook Lives. And, if people just want to, whether it's just follow my journey. I'm a big, dad joke kind of guy. I post a lot of dad jokes. People like, corny or that was awesome or whatever. So, I used to be in the politics game years ago. My life has tremendously gotten better by staying away from the trolls out there. Because you post something and all of a sudden. People are attacking you, so I kept it to travel.
Just curious,
family.
what politics? How are you involved when you did it?
I guess just giving my opinion. Which,
So that's
you know how that goes.
That's literally what the three of us here do. We give our opinions online, and
were you a meme lord?
a meme lord.
A meme lord. No, the funny thing is, I actually. If I posted a meme, it was a funny meme. I stayed away from the political ones because I don't know. I found them to be
divisive.
Kind of, yeah. I would rather debate somebody on why I feel the way I do. I didn't respect somebody that would try to shut me down. I'm a firm believer if you jump to worst case scenario. That basically eliminates your ability to reason with somebody. And when I saw somebody doing that, I'm like, you know what? There's no reasoning with you, so there's no point in talking with you. And I kind of got tired of that, so I just focused on travel and family and jokes.
That's good. Yeah, travel content is way less triggering. I was going to say, Grace, what were you going to say?
I think that's just a really smart pivot right there because politics is so stressful. Everybody has an opinion and nobody wants to talk about it anymore.
That's correct.
That's right.
I agree with you 100%. And like I said, even more so once I got diagnosed, I don't need the stress. I believe in what I believe. I vote the way I want to vote. And, I don't care about anybody else. Somebody wants to talk to me about it. I'll have a conversation. I'll be happy to.
Right.
But if it starts getting loud or one-sided, then I'm like, you know what? Let's change the subject.
Right.
Now I have a question on kind of a controversial topic a little bit. And one of my best friends, Chaz, he had leukemia for most of his childhood. And he's beat cancer, but once you get cancer, it's a very high likelihood it's going to come back. He's on medical marijuana. So what's your opinion about cancer survivors or people battling cancer and if medical marijuana should be for them or not?
Oh, absolutely. I think, if people want to do that, really the only reason why I don't, because I'm super open to it. Actually, I kind of went from, rather than smoking, because I'm not a smoker, to like gummies. But the only thing that kind of I guess that wasn't for me. I didn't like the tired feeling, you know, and I also felt like even if I had after dinner, if I took one of them, it made me feel like mentally like I'm still hungry. So I was overeating, and I don't like to overeat, and I don't like to be fatigued or tired. So, but you know, some people, if I was in pain and it was helping me, by all means, I would do it. And if that's what helps people, I'm 100% behind it.
Yeah, that's the one thing is when my mom was battling cancer, she had no appetite because it spread to her stomach. So in hindsight, I had wished that her doctors in New York gave her marijuana treatment because that could have boosted her appetite. And then maybe she could have actually, you know, had fuel for her body to fight the virus because, you know, obviously when you're sick or not feeling well, you need calories. Your body needs fuel in order to mount an immune
Right.
response defense. And when you're eating 500 calories a day because of the cancer, you're even lessening your odds of survival against it.
Survival. That's
So
correct.
absolutely right. Well, I think we've hit that 1 hour mark that we love to try to, you know, get to. And this went by so fast with you, Kris, because we had so many great conversations to talk about. We have your Instagram. We'll pull it up on the screen again for anybody who wants to follow. His Instagram for our podcast listeners is at Kris Soko, KrisSoko. So you guys can go follow him there and check out some of his travel photos. Kris, do you have any closing words for the podcast you'd like to share?
You know what? Early screening. If your doctor says no, ask them during your yearly visit. It's a simple blood test that doctors typically don't ask for. They don't check that box, you know, for a CEA, which is a cancer marker. It doesn't tell you what type of cancer that you have, but it says that you do have cancer in your body or you have elevated levels. Just ask for it. You know, it's not that big of a deal. If you're scared to get a colonoscopy, let me tell you something. It was the best sleep of my life. You know, and early screening is key. And I'll leave you with this one. If I didn't mention it in the beginning, I had a conversation when I was sitting with that GI, and I said, if I had a colonoscopy 3 years earlier, he cut me off. He goes, I would have pulled out 2 polyps. You wouldn't even be here. Just like that. And, but you know what? It is what it is. And I am here and I do have cancer and I'm just going to fight it forward. You know, be positive, have faith. And believe me, I'm an open book. So if any of your followers want to hit me up on Instagram or Facebook or talk, or, you know, whether it's live or through text or messaging, I talk to everybody and I'm more than happy to help.
Well, you have a great outlook on life, and I think that's going to go a long way in helping with battling this disease.
I appreciate that. Thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you again, Kris. Really appreciate you having you on the show. We got a lot of comments about you being an inspiration to people, and that's exactly what you are. So, Kris, we appreciate your time, and obviously we wish you great health and a fast recovery, and we hope that I'm going to say it because I think it's important here, hope you fuck cancer up because fuck cancer. All right?
Cancer is right.
Exactly. Thank you again. And obviously, guys, you can find this podcast on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, the T&A Show. Tara, any closing thoughts for your fellow Polish brother?
Yes. Kris, thank you for coming on to the program. We really appreciate your words of inspiration. And especially, I thought it was beautiful how, because one of the questions I wanted to ask you, but you answered, was what kind of changes had you experienced emotionally and mentally from or your life philosophy? Because it sounds very consistent, and I think that positive attitude is a lot of what's helping you and your family get through this, and then also like keeping the stress off. Because stress is definitely a major killer in life, and keeping you strong. So that return to hearing God's voice and realize that He has been listening, and to recognize that even through the challenges that we all experience in your life and the experience that you're having, you're still able to keep a positive outlook into this and recognize the blessings that are in your life. So thank you for sharing your story and coming onto the podcast to share the story.
Absolutely. Thank you for having me. I really enjoyed my time with you guys. And even if it saves one life, it was so worth it.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Kris. And hopefully we'll connect with you again in the future.
Sounds good. Thanks, guys.
Awesome. Take care.
Bye-bye.